like slop. It's like a lot of it is just a lot of like I feel like a lot of the podcasting scene is mostly aligned with Trump, like a lot of the big podcasters. And most of it is just kind of like just brain slop. Like there's really nothing informative. A lot of most of my friends are going to be voting for Trump. And the stuff that they listen to is like so dumb. Like they listen to I don't know if you not to stir stuff with, and these podcasts are so much bigger than my show, so it's like not even it's I don't feel bad talking shit about them, but they watch like Tim Pool. And I watched that show before.
I wondered if that was the example you were going to reach for.
Yeah, man, I think that's like one of the dumbest.
I put myself through a couple of episodes.
I've watched that. I've watched the episodes where like Scott Horton's on it, and then I've just like listened to this idiot talk over Scott. I was like, oh my God, this is so painful. You're talking to a brilliant person and you're interrupting them over and over and over again, and you just don't know anything. But I have friends who like listen to all of his stuff, and they're like, "Oh man, have you seen the last Tim Pool?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't. I watched bits and pieces. The guy's a complete moron." But yeah, there's other shows that are very adjacent to that, and they have these huge audiences, like millions and millions of people watch them. They listen to these shows, and a lot of it is just kind of just brain slop. Like your content does so much better. If we were to divert this show's efforts and we were just like, hey, let's just make like anti-social justice warrior stuff, then immediate hit. Because that's the type of stuff that you crave. Like you want to humiliate your foe. You know what I mean? Like you want to just see your foe humiliated on stage. So, you go and you search the internet for, oh, look at this Kamala lesbian voter. Oh, she doesn't even know who the first president. It's like something so dumb.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right there. And that's what I mean with the psychological dimension, the behavioral dimension of what we're talking about here. And it is very easy to hack that and manipulate it. And, I definitely hear you. My sister recently started seeing someone who's a huge fan of the Daily Wire, and it's just,
oh boy.
He's just
one of my best friends is a big fan of Shapiro, and I was like, I always make fun of him for it, and he's like, shut up, anti-Semite. Like he's joking when he says that, but I'm like,
the thing is he's such a well-meaning guy. Not Ben Shapiro, he's awful, but just the average guy. Really? Like, they're really like normal guys, totally well-meaning, but then someone will mention something about like Palestine, they'll be like, well, Israel totally has the right to defend itself. What, do you love Hamas? It's like, what do you even know about Hamas? And it's like, well, nothing really. It's like, yeah, so why are you all fired up about this, dude? Not that you can't be fired up about it, but like you know nothing about it. You're fired up because some asshole told you to be fired up about it and told you what to think, and you were like, yeah, let's own those fucking social justice people, because that's really who it's associated with here in Michigan. Is it's really associated with a left-wing cause, being anti-Israel's war. So, and he drives through Ann Arbor pretty regularly on his way to work. So, yeah, it's just sad. Because, like, there's really no reason for Americans to get fired up about really anything that happens. Number one, anything that happens outside of America. None of that matters to us. I was reading something the other day in the Wall Street Journal, which, God, I hate the Wall Street Journal so much. But you know me, I read the corporate press every day. The Wall Street Journal's just been so horrible lately. They were saying something about this threat that Iran poses to America's national security strategy. And it was like, oops, I don't think you're supposed to say that bit. I think you're just supposed to say national security, guys. I think you're just supposed to say Iran is a threat to our national security. That's the line. Because the strategy of attempted global hegemony, that's not really what you're supposed to say out loud. You're just supposed to say our national security. You know what I mean? Like, It's just so ridiculous. Like nothing that any country in the world could do really affects our national security terribly. Certainly nothing Iran does. But, if they and Israel get into a scuffle and, the Israelis assassinate someone, in Tehran, and Tehran sends a bunch of drones over towards Israel, we're supposed to believe that in some way affects our security, but it isn't. It affects the security strategy, the vision of the world that Beltway hacks who don't have a real living imagine would be great. But it has nothing to do with our well-being. So, yeah. But again, they use it to get people terribly fired up, get people at each other's throats. Yeah, it's just awful.
I mean, I wish people knew more about these foreign policy issues, because if they did, then they would not be so brain dead. But it's just the real fact, and this is something I've come to terms with, is that people are just not that interested. Like people are not very interested in understanding like the Russia-Ukraine conflict, or like what are the roots of that, like what really led up to that. People are a little bit more on the right, willing to understand maybe the complexities of the war due to it being an issue in this election. But other than that, other than a way to like kind of slam dunk on the libs or the Democrats, it's not really something that people think about. Same thing with Israel Palestine. Like people just, like most Jews I know don't really know that much about the conflict. They're just kind of like, yeah, I've been to Israel on birthright, and I love Israel, and I made friends with some IDF soldiers. But other than that, like they don't really know that much about the conflict. So it's like you're not people are just concerned with like their immediate surroundings for the most part, like their career, their job, their social groups. If they have families, their families, obviously. They're not too interested in taking the time to understand some foreign conflict, because it takes a lot of work and a lot of study. Like you're never going to understand the Russia-Ukraine conflict by reading a couple of articles from the Wall Street Journal, or even vice versa, reading a couple of articles from the Wall Street Journal and then reading, some more nuanced articles from like the Quincy Institute or something like that. Like you're not going to understand the conflict. It takes serious time to, read books and to dive into the topic. And frankly, people just don't see the return on doing that. Like you said earlier, I mean, people don't see the return on studying a foreign policy issue because they're complicated. And the deeper you dive into a lot of these foreign policy issues, a lot of times they become more boring, and people just want the juicy stuff. So it's sometimes it's kind of a fool's errand. The only thing that you can really do is explain how that foreign policy issues is impacting their home life. And that's about it. But unless you can, like, with the Iraq War being the perfect example, or the Vietnam War, even a better example, I mean, people knew people who died there. People understood that these projects were just kind of big, money pits. And they, you saw the reports of like guys getting their faces blown off. That's when people will turn against it. But the state that we are in now, where the U.S. basically has adopted like what the British did in like the 16th century, just use privateers everywhere, where everything is just a mercenary army. And like, basically our Legion, like the U.S. Army, is basically the Ukrainian army. Like that's the U.S. Army right there. I don't see a real distinction between the Ukrainian army and the U.S. Army. It would be like if the Romans, it's just like a garrison in fucking Gaul of Roman troops. Maybe those troops aren't from Rome, but they're fighting on behalf of the Roman Empire. So people, since people don't know people who are dying there, it's like none of their concern, and the money's all fake. Like people have gotten so used to just pumping out dollars, just the printing press, that it's just like money is fake to everyone. So it's a hard task to connect those dots with most people.
Yeah, and I think that's by design.